We're like,
Dr. Sana, you're on mute.
Hi, welcome to the Norn Way live session here. We are very happy to reconnect with all our viewers, and we will be yet again speaking to you about a topic that is, it's not just a topic, it is a subject, it is the talk of, among many communities. It's pretty much the talk of the town here. And it's really a collective community issue, I believe. And we will be bringing to you a series of issues regarding what it is that we have been feeling and discussing over in the last few weeks. And I'm sure that a lot of you who will be joining us will resonate and will connect with it. And perhaps you guys are also thinking along the same lines and feeling the emotions that we are feeling. And, maybe you can join us and express your views and any expressions that you would like to make. So here we are, welcome, join us. And the topic that we bring to you is, as you can see, equally human, finding collective support with the Norn Way. So hello girls, Dr. Hafza and Misha. Very happy to connect with you guys. So
mm,
Hi,
this
Dr. Sana, how are you?
like I said, I'm well. How are you?
um, like, thank you, Dr. Sana. Thank you for asking. It's a good evening, good night, Friday night that we are just reconnecting. Let's just move on with our
Let's
session.
just kick off. So, like I said, this is not just a topic, and it's a series of issues that we have pretty much tried to put into this tagline, and we will be bringing to you. And we would just like to share our opinions and our views and our concerns and our apprehensions and our whatever our opinions or whatever our feelings are over the various things that we will be bringing up to you. This is really also an opportunity today to connect with all the women as well as men, because we find that both the genders, it's time that both the genders really align and come to see each other as equally human. So that is where we start off from. So I've got Dr. Hafza missing. um, Dr. Hafza, you're back. You're muted.
Hi, I'm back. There was a bit of disturbance in the background, and
Okay,
thank you so much,
Misha,
Dr. Sana.
I'll just go with you. So, Misha, we have heard various things, and let's just cut to the chase. As women, we have been feeling, a little perturbed, a little apprehensive, a little confused, and that is the reason we've come together tonight, and really want to talk about how, as women, we can be heard, we can be seen, we can be understood as opposed to misunderstood, and we can really get together and talk about the issues that I think most women are very afraid to bring up, but that is what these public forums are for. And we would like to use this opportunity to raise such issues. Number one, how is it, Hafsa, since you're back, so I'll just go with you because this question was for you. Women supporting women, and our topic is collective support. How can you find support in other women, and how important it is that women need to support each other in order to become empowered, in order to become feel stronger, in order to become more integrated, and in order to feel able to be heard and seen and understood. So how do you think that role that women play for other women, really, what does it mean for you?
Okay, first things first. That's a very, very important question, Dr. Sana, that you just asked me. Um, for the longest time, I remember when I used to try and look for inspiration. I used to look up to, systematically the way our society is placed in the male figures around us. I would always look up to them. I would always, take guidance from them. But there's an element to what you're facing as a woman that I feel like a lot of them miss out. For example, there are certain hurdles and there are certain holdups to your success, to your day to day life, to people's reactions and responses towards you that are not something that men ever have to face if you are in a patriarchal society. For example, there are certain questions directed to us. I mean, our jobs are a question. Our Independence is often a question. And these aren't things that men are ever questioned about. So the kind of advice that's going to come from them is going to be from a place of absolute assurance of, if you do this, this is going to happen. But when it comes to us, we need to hear advice which also takes into account that, if you do this, this what is what you will face, and this is this, uh, you'll have to counter this way, and then you can perhaps rise above. So
So
I would
basically, for the actions, there are consequences, and these
exactly.
consequences are always, spelled out in a more intimidating, more stronger way for women.
Yes, and I feel like if uh like you said, women looking for women towards support, I feel like it's important to give that to each other because you are aware of the hurdles that you face, on a day-to-day basis. A lot of times, there's this very common statement given by people that women, they're always into susdal ke masle, or they're always into their own in-law issues or something, talk something beyond that. Unfortunately, when people make that your entire life, it's very weird that they'd ask you that question. Now, if I were to take advice from a man, he's not going to consider it in this society. But it's important for me to hear about my success and take guidance from a woman, or be supported by a woman in this process in order to make that struggle a little easier. So that would is something that I would say. It in my life in particular, this is something that was very, very essential. I've had several holdups, and the one thing that made it a lot easier was having a certain circle around me, which was telling me what to expect for myself, what best to expect for myself, what I should settle for, what I shouldn't settle for. And had they not been telling me, had that background echo of people not telling me what my rights as a person are, I think I would have constantly made bad decisions. And it was important for me to hear that, and important for me to hear that from my own gender. So that's why I consider women's support a lot essential and very important.
Yes, and this is something that we brought up before also in our discussions, that women need a tribe, and women need a village, and that's absolutely true. And the first people that women need to rise up for themselves are women. But having said that, like you pointed out, in the patriarchal setup that we women exist in, and that is not exclusive to, I feel, any society. It's a universal phenomenon, and for since the beginning of time, women have felt that essence of patriarchy and that force of patriarchy. Having said that, now it has become digressive. In various societies, you would like to say that in the Western society, women are more liberated, and the Eastern cultures, they are yet, to be liberated. They're suppressed, and there is definitely reality in it. And when we talk about our own culture, we see that yes, we very much exist in a patriarchal society, but this point of view is something that is not, taken well by men, right? And also by a lot of women. And this collective response is really what toxic misogyny is all about. And this is something that we want to talk about, because when you talk about feminism, we're not talking about that. We want to put that aside. We want to talk about toxic misogyny. And when we talk about toxic misogyny and toxic patriarchy, which itself, it's a one-way force, it is toxic. There are women who partake in this process of toxic misogyny, because there are women and men who are and who do suppress women, and it's a systematic kind of, you know or cultural, this is not maybe deliberate as well. I think in our society it goes back to cultural conditioning, and that has to role to play. So when I bring up toxic misogyny, I also feel that, like I address the role of women, I do feel that there is a role that men need to play, and they can turn this toxic misogyny into healthy misogyny as well, or a healthy balance, where they support the women in their lives around them, where they uplift their status, their strengths. Not saying that women in any way should be made superior to men, or you create a conflict or a ideology of war. And I always say that this is not war between genders. This is really war between, a balance, and between, a balance that needs to be created in the society, where women need to be stop being misunderstood. So coming to Misha, How, Misha, you are somebody who has these really, inspiring men in your life, and they have played a really powerful and a very sort of inspirational role in your life. And I would like you to talk about, how it is that the men in your life, that the males in your life can empower a woman. Not all of the men are there to suppress women. There are men who are enlightened and who are interested in supporting the women in their lives, and I know that you have experienced it, so please go ahead and talk about that.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. Thank you for the question, and sorry for the background noise if it is disrupting. So I just wanted to add, answer your question over here. Since my father and my brother are the role models in my life, and they have supported me to the point that none of the other men does practically for their daughters or their loved ones, because they have set a standard that that is, I don't want to say as a liberal, but everyone should set. Because when I was in a point in my career where I was not feeling good about certain steps that I should take. But the support that I had from my family, there's like, you don't need to be worried about anything. We're behind your back. And this sentence not only gave me the strength, but also gave me the boost to do my best. Because while I was in my at the lowest point in my life, it's that support that gave me the made me the best person who I am today, and made me took the bold steps. Because support is what is required by a woman. Because if somebody is there, especially like women in the family also give the support, but when men in the family are giving you that equal support, so it just expands your chest, and you think that you are strong enough. Because that's how I've been upright. So thank you for the question.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and that's so true, because, like I said earlier on, like, there is a role that women have to play and men have to play to support men and women. But since we are, women, three women, and we're here at the Norn Way, which is basically us three women, so we would definitely want there to be an opportunity, and perhaps in the future we could, and maybe our viewers can like suggest if they want us to talk about something about the other gender, like the men. But today we are talking about women, putting them more in light, as we ourselves are women. And there is this is something that needs to be talked about and heard. And so thank you for sharing your views. Now, moving on, Hamza, I'm going to come to you. You see, like, you both are working professionals, and of course, like, you have, and your parents have invested so much in your careers, in bringing you guys girls up. And there's so much that goes in, there's so much effort, there's so much hard work, there's so much sort of there's so many dreams that are involved, there's so many aspirations, and it's from the parents who are educating their daughters, as well as the daughters who are pursuing this education. Hafza is a doctor, you, Amisha, are a speech therapist, I myself am a doctor. So, once we enter the practical life where we are to start a career, what happens typically is, and things are definitely improving, but I would still kind of I would still stick to the stereotypical, sort of atmosphere that exists in our society. And the stereotypical example would be that, there's a doctor, there's an engineer, there's XXY, whoever, and then that girl, immediately as she starts off her career, there are these questions that are just thrown on her. There are these sort of objections that come along her way when she's pursuing a career. So, for example, oh, you want to start a job. When will you get married? You might be too old to get married. How will you find, a suitable man your age who's going to be suitable to this age? What about kids? If you're married and if you're working and if you're not having kids, then don't you think it's about time you consider kids? Things like, if you're working, okay, how are you going to balance your work and personal life? What about work-life balance? Then if somebody is married or even single, these are all pressures that are exerted on that girl, on that female. And that really, really I mean, as women, we have experienced them, so we can talk about them from personal experiences. That these pressures are very, very intense. They put you in a state of self doubt. You spent all this time studying, pursuing a career, getting the degree, trying to, make a sort of a mark of your own, and then you're kind of thrown astray by all these questions that come up in the society. What do you girls have to say about it? I'm going to start with Hafsa.
First things first. Uh, Relevant question, and it still is relevant despite the fact the times are changing, but they're still changing for a very privileged group of people. They're not changing for everybody across the board. So there's that. I think the single most important uh, thing that needs to be addressed is how we look at the birth of the girl child. I mean, our topic for today is equally human. I think we are, well, I'm glad that I was not amongst those people who were, I wasn't born to people who did not celebrate having a daughter. My dad was happy. He was throwing cake and sweets around. And he was asked, "Your beti ki पैदाइश पे हमने किसी को इतना खुश नहीं देखा." And he's like, he says that I was shocked that people were shocked at me being this happy. So I came from a privileged background where the girl child was accepted. Now, that is where the equality begins. Are you happy whether you have a daughter? Are you happy, equally happy if you have a daughter as you are as you have a son? That is where the problem is. The minute we decide to bring this, inequality, lack of equality, inequality in the happiness of the birth of particular gender of your child is where the problem begins right there. That is where the inequality, or you don't consider them equally human, because you would celebrate the birth of a human, but the minute it's not a son and you're not equally happy about it, that's where you're not considering them
I'm
equally
going to stop
human.
you there. That's a good point you've made. However, there will be many parents, right, who will object to that. And so I'm going to play devil's advocate because I'm sure this will come up. That,
Okay.
nahin, that's not true. We're equally happy. And in Islam, in our religion, of course, in our religion, this entire concept is negated. There's no difference between a daughter and a son. But you will have parents who will say, and I feel that that objection would be understandable and acceptable, because
I
the way
think
I look
it's
at it, you would have parents who would say that's not the issue, that's not the issue. But
that's
there are roles
perfectly
defined, there
understandable.
are gender roles defined. So, it's not a matter of whether you're happy you have a
um
girl or a boy. What
I'm going to
about
talk
the
about,
role that is
yeah.
defined?
Okay.
That when you get
I'm
into,
gonna I'm gonna talk when I speak for whatever I'm speaking about is across the board for a lot of people. I'm
yeah.
talking about people who do consider this and people who don't. Some people who tell themselves that it's okay, but whenever you have a male son, it suddenly uplifts you. And moving on to your conversation of the roles, given that the conversation was about whether we face the same kind of question marks or the same kind of hurdles as
Hmm.
men do, or do they face the same ones as us? I do feel like this is an important point to start off from, because the minute you do that, you have to understand why are you getting more happier, or why are you not celebrating women enough for it's probably because, like you said, the roles that are defined. You decided that women were good enough for maybe reproductivity. I'm talking about basic instincts. I'm not talking about what you're telling yourself. I'm talking about the contributing factors that are leading to the mindset of the society. Somewhere you decided reproductivity was for your daughter. That was the role that was seen. Hence, she was supposed to be the caretaker of your kids. She was supposed to have these the cook around the home, the care person around the home, or somebody who runs things around the home. He decided that she was going to be housebound. No matter how, in this particular society, no matter how privileged you are, somewhere this thing seeps in unless and until you make a conscious decision to make sure that you don't as a parent. And I've seen some very few families who've consciously decided to negate that aspect too. Uh, for your men, you decided that they belonged outside and that they had a huge part to play in running the world dynamics outside. So suddenly you created limitations and you created opportunities. That's where the problem begins. The minute I got into my undergraduate years, so far my parents were raising me, but the minute I got into my undergraduate years, the society started butting in. Like, when am I going to get married? Uh, am I going to get, is my sister going to get married before I am? Who's going to go first? uh, when is it going to be, and how soon can it be? And there has been a sequence of that. I mean, if I were to talk about it, I remember my younger sister got engaged and married before me, and that was something that raised a lot of questions across the board, because everybody was like, you know what, you and I realized that I had done just so much in my life, but my worth was suddenly defined to marriage and how far I'm getting ahead in that area. I'm not saying that's important. If your personal goal is companionship as well, one of your personal goals is companionship as well, then that's something that is personal to you. I think the society forgets that fact, and it tries to impose its own expectations of where you should be. uh, that is where the problem starts for us, and it kind of sets us back. And I do not think that men have to go through that much, because somewhere the society decided they belonged outside and they were going to create world progress, and we were going to get a share of that progress. So I think that's my thought process behind this particular question that you like. Or was there else that something else that you wanted me to say as well about this?
Yeah, no, I understand what you said, but moving on from that, and I want to ask you, I guess perhaps I'll move to Misha. That's a good point you've raised. But like I said, that's not always the case, right? You have parents. I want to talk about, I mean, that itself is true, and you have people, right? You have people who definitely, and I agree with the point that, the root of patriarchy somehow, somewhere starts from that. So that's the starting point you pointed out, and it's an important point. However, you know, I want to move ahead, and I want to get to the point where, there are parents who are educating their girls and they're educating their sons and they're getting the same kind of education. You have a daughter who's a doctor, and then you have a son who is, a doctor, or an MBA, or etc. And they're very happy to educate both of them. But at the point, and this is where I talk about gender roles, roles defined to genders, right? I want to get to that, and Misha, I'm going to ask you that the gender role definition, that a woman should be the caretaker, the mother, and that's all true. Those are roles that are assigned to her biologically as well, right? Women have to give birth to children. There's no denying that. Women are the mothers, they are the nurturers. We are not questioning that. But the role definition that the society gives you, which is, it resists the fact that you can go beyond that. So if you are a single girl of a certain age and pursuing your career, getting ahead in your career, doing well, the pressures that you get perhaps are the roles that are defined to you. That maybe there's an expectation that, what about shadi? Shadi ka kya hoga? Bachchon ka kya hoga? When is this going to happen? That is more important. What are you doing? Like, have you prioritized your life right? The pressures that come on your parents. Now, you said, Misha, that you have parents who support you fully, who want you to pursue a career, who are not perhaps that much worried about your marriage and your settling down, because they know that that will happen in due time as well. But the society around you, the people around you, the noise around you, which is pressurizing you, which may be, saying that to you. What do you have to say about that? The role definition. At a certain stage, a girl should give up her career, take a break, get married, have kids. Then, we'll see, dekhi jayegi. The man is a caretaker. What about this?
It's not just that, it's not the family. Sometimes you have a supportive family. So my family dynamics are completely opposites of of women who are experiencing the pressures in the family, that when you get married or when you're having kids, when your childbearing age is going forward, you won't be able to have kids, your eggs won't be, so
Yeah.
this all kind of things.
Yes.
So yeah, so but it's not the family, it's people outside, who you work with. When they start to just penetrate your bubble, your personal space, then things get a bit difficult to address, because that's where you need to create boundaries. That's where you say, need to tell them that this is the personal life. Yes, we are progressing forward, but sometimes when you are progressing for pursuing in a career and you're successful and you know what you want in life, you have clear goals, and nobody can stop you. But people who are actually working with you start feeling, I don't know. I don't want to use the term jealous. I just like, insecure. They just get insecure and start crossing those boundaries where they don't have anything to say about your professional life, so they start talking about your personal life. So it's just the gender roles that women in workplaces are not promoted much, because when you report a situation where men are not behaving nicely, so what they do is like, we can't just fire men just because they have a family, they have to run. If the women is right, they then what they do is like they play against the women. However, regardless of the fact that you gave the facts, you gave the evidence, and they know by the end of the day, by the conscious, when they go home, they know that all the proofs are against that. But then all the support goes to men, and this is not only in Pakistan; it's everywhere in the world. Because I listen to, yeah. So
Yeah. No, no, go
that's
on, go on. You're absolutely right.
because this gender equality is happening everywhere. Because the other day I was listening to this TED talk, and the women was talking about it everywhere. Like women, regardless of the fact that their degrees or their qualifications, men, if they do a bad behavior, women are told to stay at home. Because recently I was just listening to this episode. Student just stopped pursuing a degree just because she was threatened by the harassment in her class. She stopped, she just discontinued the degree in her final year. She didn't have the support from her family, that's why she didn't. However, there had to be a support in her family, she would have continued it.
Yeah.
So
So I think what you're saying is true, and there are these roles that are defined for women and men, and like you said, you were listening to the TED talk, and there are many TED talks about it. You know, in the West, it's an issue as well, about gender equality, equal wage. But my question is more, let's come back to our society, right? And we, on one hand, we have so many girls who are pursuing their education, their degrees, and then they become housewives, by I would say it's the conditioning. Sometimes it is said that they do it out of choice, and there are who do it out of choice.
There are definitely.
There is a background, pre-existing conditioning that is contributing to her mindset, right? To that girl's mindset, and it's a conditioning that goes. It there. This is conditioning that is done to you by your parents, by the larger society. This is what the girl hears growing up. Okay, after you become a doctor or an engineer or an accountant, you will get married, and from there on, this new chapter of your life will start. Where there's nothing wrong about it. I get more disturbed when I see that girls are doing very well in their fields and they're being supported at home as well, but the larger society is pressurizing them and is hindering them. Hamza, what do you have to say about that? That role that the society or the conditioning or our setup has to play. You might be supported like you are at home, might be fully confident, you may know where you're going, but this constant noise.
That is, yeah, that's quite a point you've made. And yes, once you get out of your comfortable shell at home, where you're supported, you're loved, and you go out into the real field, there's a different challenge ahead just because of the fact that you're a woman. For example, if I would put forward a certain idea, it would be like, okay, we'll think about it. And if the same words, the very same words are uttered out of a male mouth, it's suddenly like, huh, that's a good idea. I just said the same thing. Uh, just because it's mansplained a bit, this is something that frustrates me the very most. That you would say the same thing, you would use the exact same words, you would put forward the exact same idea, but the reception of that idea or those words is suddenly like, you know what? People are conditioned to not listen to it, and I'm not just saying, okay, this is specifically men who do that. Men do that more, of course, but that is something across the board in professional settings in our society in particular. Just because of the fact that, you know what? there is a sense of, like you said, misogyny. There is a sense that women are lesser, hence whatever they say has to be less, even if it's the same thing the guy says, or maybe something better. And that is frustrating because I now have to make twice the amount of effort as that particular gentleman, just on the basis of my gender, to get my point across. And that is very, very frustrating. Also, I have no idea why, but promotions are always, almost always somewhere preferentially given to men. Reason
Yeah.
being is, he has to run the house.
Mm.
Why would you assume that? There are single women, and there are so many single women. And if you're watching this and you're people who are, you are a boss and you run a company, there are so many single women who are very much struggling to pay their own bills, or if they're not struggling, they're thriving to pay their own bills, and they're supporting themselves and supporting their families or themselves or whatever dreams that they have had to work so hard for. And they deserve that on the basis of their competence and their merit, but they're not given that particular promotion only and solely on the basis of gender. And that's just
Sorry,
very,
do you think that
very
somewhere
sad.
along the line there is an assumption that, oh, she's single, so someday she's going to be married and she might leave the job? Why should we invest in her?
One of the reasons could be this too. One of the reasons could surely be this as well. That what, लड़कियां, there's a line saying लड़कियां तो छोड़ देती हैं, लड़कियां तो
Mm.
जान देती हैं. You don't realize there's a collective pressure created by the society which is going to make her leave. You're not going to support her promotions over there. The society is already pulling her parents, her supportive parents, constantly to tie her down in some way or the other. And that's
Yes.
a lot of pressure. So,
Yes.
like you said,
It's
that
a lot of
there are more steps to our ladder of success than there are to men around us, and solely on the basis of the fact that we are of a different gender. And that's entirely
absolutely.
because of misogyny. Either there's a hidden hatred towards the women gender, or there's an assumption that they're lesser than you. So that's not a healthy mindset at all.
Well,
And
there's
that's
definitely that's true that there could be both. But maybe, I mean, what I'm trying to really get at is what if it's not those two? And what if, I mean, let me again ask you, do you think it is just that expectation that, nahi bhai, we don't hate women, we love our girls, and a lot of times, Hafza and Misha, it's the parents as well, right? Who advocate their daughters, कि bhai, you're married now. Please become subservient to your husband and to your in-laws. Leave your job, sit at home. And these are women who might be very successful, extremely intelligent, extremely ambitious, and they are forced to do it. And these, and the notion is not that, hatred, or it's not lesser, but it is that, excuse me, you don't understand that women have a role. They are the nurturers, the mothers. They have to stay at home. Men, however, are bahar ki cheez. They are the bread earners. They have to go out into the world while the woman takes care of the house and the household. What do you have to say about that?
like I said,
When
that
the
is
truth is manipulated to you,
what you
presented to
say. I
you
completely understand what you're saying
in
is that
such an
what
exploitative,
this
sugar-coated way that you are not
it
able to
feels
say
like
you
it feels
hate
like it's
me or you
coming.
think I'm less. It goes like, no, we love you. We accept you. You are great. But, darling, who's going to do all this? And if you
That's
don't
very
do
well
all
said.
this, you are not good enough. So, what about this manipulation,
Uh,
which is equal to toxic misogyny and the patriarchy that we live in?
that's the thing. It stems from toxic misogyny, and it comes up. And a lot of times, parents, the most supportive ones, feel like they're coming from a very big place of love and affection when they tell you that what, this is how it is. The reason being is, like, for example, let's say the three of us are working in a certain setup, and there's a system around there that plays that this is how it works. The problem is nobody is willing to think out of that system. The system was that the mother's the caretaker, and this specifically comes from the generation before us, because this is where the roles were very, very much anchored across the globe, not just in Pakistan but everywhere in the world. If you look at
Yes,
old advertisements from American newspapers, those vintage sorts, you see a nice propped up lady who's in the kitchen with a saucepan, and that's the kind of mindset that was created globally. So now that the society is expanding, a metropolis is getting more habitated. There is a constant need for women to be in place of, in jobs as well, because the kind of economic crisis and the economic changes that are going on in the world, it's important for both genders to to participate in this as well, or just participate in it because, well, they want to. But just because of the fact that there is a certain role decided, we'd put that person in that particular box, uh, in that particular role, and decide that, this is something you'll do well. For example, if I were, let's say, a content creator in if I were given a role as a content creator in Norway, and Dr. Sana, you were only given a content creator, the role of a speaker in Norway, and let's say Misha was solely the tech person behind it. Had our boundaries and that box been very well defined, I don't think we'd have much creativity or joy in doing what we are right now. And let's say there's an assumption that you have to do this. Now, just expand this example to the society at large. The role of the caretaker and everything's assigned to you, you'd feel a little suffocated. And somebody would say that, no, I think if you move on to creating content, you would not do well at the job of a speaker. Or if I would take up the charge of as a speaker, I would not do well at my content creation.
Absolutely.
So the idea that a person needs to fit into something, or they can't be a shared uh, the roles
Space.
can't be shared. Exactly, the roles can't be shared is something that needs to change a lot. In
Yes.
certain
And
families where I've seen,
moving, sorry, just interjecting you. Since
just one more
we've
point
talked,
I'd like to add.
yes, go ahead.
Okay. In
Go
certain
ahead.
families where I've seen that these roles are not well defined.
Mm.
Eating, feeding yourselves, cleaning up after yourselves, uh, earning collectively. When it's considered, when the boundaries of genders are like completely erased and it's decided that every member in the household, when they cohabitate, have to do this, the perception changes. When you decide that, what, it's basic life skill to cook, whether you're a woman or a man, it's important that you get to help yourself to feed yourself. That's only expanding you as a man. It's not belittling you. You're growing up more as a man to do that. Likewise, if there's a woman who knows how to do cooking, everything else. Now, if she gets to be a financial contributor at home, that increases everybody's net value at home. The net worth, the net buying, spending power, everything else adds up. So, whenever you decide to remove the box of gender for these roles and decide to create shared roles in order to gain more value, more joy, and benefits out of life, it's a lot better, and that's where we become equally human, and that's where we find collective support.
Right. Right. Well, that's true. But moving on, let's come to the other gender. Do you think, Misha, the other gender can play a role to change the system? I mean, we women are obviously trying and struggling. I think most women are, and they're waking up to the fact that these roles are actually defined, and they are not defined according to any religion. They're only defined to any hard sealed truth. It's really just the culture that has defined these roles, and women are trying to break out of that cultural bandaging, that's been done on women. But do you think men can change this, and what role can men play?
Men can totally change this. If
Mm,
like any person can change, they just need to change their mindset,
mhm,
because it's the mindset that needs to be changed and people should address it. Because sometimes I've seen like women are promoting these mindsets,
mm,
because sometimes men are doing the right part and then women from old school of thought, ju- they just stand up and then brainwash those good mindset people that this needs to be done in the old way. So regardless of the fact that we need to just go by the rules or something like that, people should have the courage to change, because this is what needs to be changed by the gender, that as people as we progress, we need to change our mindset, and we need to change the belief that why women need to go out, why there's a gender bias. Because I've known men that are very good, and who just supports women in each and every area, not just men but also women. So, and when it comes to the part that where women don't comfortable going out in the world, where they don't feel safe, they men have took a stand and empowered those women to do that. And I would like to give a message to all the women, like, and all the men who watch this show, to just give that strength and power to all these women to speak up, because in the end, this is the kind of courage that you're going to provide, that and making other people, like women like us, to be brave and take action. So this is what it is, because I believe that men are already, they're good people, and they're not so good people. I will not say the word bad, it's just that the mindset that needs to be shifted, because it's the choice of the words that we need to do mindfully. Because I remember when I reported a case to a good nice gentleman, he's like, men need to be more mindful in their behavior, and they need to take responsibility, because it's the household that tells men that, oh, you shouldn't be bothered about this.
Mm.
Men are abroad like this. They don't need to feel bad about this. You don't need to cry or something like that. And then I met people who's like, we cry, we need to just move on. They are very good listeners, and I believe that we need to find those people and to connect with those, and in order to define more gender clear roles, in order to have more clarity. So this is my take.
Yeah, agreed. Am I echoing?
Yeah, yeah. And now, Dr. Sana, you tell us about that. What's your view on this entire topic, since you were quite interested in talking about this
Yes.
topic? So,
I
yeah.
wanted to, I do want to express my views, but first I want to double check, am I echoing or am I sounding okay?
No, no, you were perfectly sounding.
All
No,
right.
no.
Well, I think, you know what, I mean, you girls have made some really, really strong points, and it's the truth. It's nothing but the truth. And, there's no denying that, we are, as women, struggling to make, things work in our favor as well by not, exploiting the other gender. And that, I think, is the right of every woman. Now, it's not easy to do that, whereas, some women are privileged, but others are not. I do want to say that, the point that Misha made, that yes, men, and that's why I asked this question. Definitely, men can change this dynamic, this toxic gender role defined dynamic, right? That, and men have a role to play in that, because if a man stands up to, you know, I wouldn't, well, for the woman that he is closely related to or friends with or married to, or whose sister it is or whose daughter it is, there's a barrier that's broken, and there's that man who speaks up for the patriarchy, and it makes immense amounts of difference. But you made a very good point, Nisha, which is, this cultural conditioning, which is so strong, that you do have these boys, you do have these young men, or you may have those men who do feel that women need to be supported and who try and come up and support the women, but they are bashed by their own families, by their own, relatives, by their own parents, maybe, or the wider society, the friends. And there is a concept of mansplaining, but I also do think that there is man shaming. The friends would be like, "Oh God, you're such a weakling! Like you're sucker for this woman." Like "joru ka gulam" is a very popular term, right? If a husband is supporting the wife or speaking up for the wife, immediately the parents or the sisters or the brothers or the friends start shaming him. Then you have, the pressures that come onto him of being threatened to be ostracized from the family. The man is scared that if I don't conform to the standards and the conditions and the boundaries that are set by my parents, my family, they're going to ostracize me, because there is that pressure on them that if you do it, we don't want to have anything to do with you. It basically means you're declaring war against, or it basically means that you're disrespecting us. So it is very hard for the men as well to break out of this patriarchy. So my point that I want to make today, and I really believe that this patriarchal setup or this toxic misogyny is not really serving men either. It's not doing them any good, because it is actually those ones who are wanting to fight, who are wanting to stand up for. It bashes them down as well, and they are themselves stuck in the in the shackles of this toxic patriarchy or misogyny as much as women are. So I think overall, everyone will really needs to take a pause, and people really need to think about whether it's a Hamza, you said it's more prevalent in the generation before us, and I absolutely agree with you, and perhaps more prevalent in the generation before them. And with every generation, there's an attempt that's been made by men and women both to struggle out of, crawl out of this system, or somehow fight some barriers of this patriarchy. But we all need to really think about, how it's really just not doing serving anybody good. Of course, the ones who are benefiting, which are widely the men who actually accept and endorse it, it's working well for them. But overall, I think women are suffering. Coming to, what's lately been happening, you also have incidences now that, God forbid, and it's actually happened, that something absolutely heinous and absolutely objectionable and absolutely brutal and unacceptable under any tradition, culture, society, religion, uh, humanity. Like it's something like a murder that's committed against a woman. And you find that after a day of mourning, people actually begin to question that woman who was murdered. What was she doing in the house? What was she doing alone on the road with the child? What was she doing driving in the middle of the night with her kids? In this society is very unsafe. I mean, the poor woman or the poor girl is not in this world, has been violated brutally, has been wronged, her family, her children, the relatives, and yet you have questions of people going like, men and women both, but what was she doing with such a person? What was she doing on the road? What was she doing with the child? What was she doing? What about this? How will we ever come over this? Does this have
Uh,
anything to do with goal definition? Does this have something to do with our values of humanity? Does this have anything to do with our culture? I get very confused. I feel it's got nothing to do with anything. No culture in the world promotes anything
this
like that.
Roxana, you raised such an important point, and all of us are equally traumatized by the kind of events that are going on right now, that are constantly considering the life of a woman less solely because of the fact that she is a woman and because she failed to somewhere fit into that role that the society gave her, or something of the sort. I don't know, but some way or the other, it's happening because they consider it a lesser gender. Um, as much as I try and avoid, but I'm going to bring up religion over here and say that at no point in time in history ever were women safe. Uh, Even during the prophetic era, I remember the incident that's mentioned in the Quran where it says, it talks about Prophet's wife and her virtue, and it safeguards it, and how God Himself defended her about it. So you know what? The whole point is that each time something happens to women, people come to the worst conclusions. Like, unfortunately, the society is very unforgiving. And I think people need to start growing out of that. And people need to understand that you need to look at the bigger picture. If there is a woman missing, you need to start asking and questioning whether she's safe or not, rather than questioning where was she or where is she? What is she doing or what is she up to? How is she? Is she safe or not? That should be the first question on everybody's mind. And I think we should focus on those things. Likewise, if there is something that happens heinous to a woman, your questions should not be around the circumstances as much as it should be focused on the crime and the seriousness of it. And that's very important. Uh, a lie, the murder of one human is the murder of the entire humanity,
Absolutely
and I think
sorry, but can I interject you
that's
for one second?
important. Sure.
Because like you've quoted the hadith, and that's absolutely true, and that's something in our religion. And I think the incidents you brought up, it's a very good example that at all times this has happened, right? Where questions are raised, and so my point is that again, like this is something that's very sad, and the reason that we have addressed it is that we are just all very disturbed by it, right? And it's something that we as a society need to consider, men and women. And Misha, is there anything else you want to say about this?
I guess you both have covered the points really well because these are so pressing points that my 2 cents would be that people need to show some humanity because they need to consider that everyone is having their own kind of hardship in life. So if we can't just less the burden, we don't add to that burden by speaking of the things that we don't know about that and speaking of the facts that we were not in the place. So that's why it is said that when you listen to an event, just uh, just listen but don't give your opinion on it because you don't know what actually had happened. So this is what I want to say to everyone, because when I see people talking about other stuff and not knowing, if you can't say good anything good about it, at least don't say bad about it, because it is in the long run going to affect the people who are suffering from it. So if you can't make ease for the people, at least don't just become a burden for them or become a pain for them. So this is what it is.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very much it. Equally human and finding collective support at the Norn Way. I think that's what the message we want to leave you with. That if you can't mediate or if you can't help or contribute in any way, at least don't hurt the people who are suffering more than they've already been hurt. And let's just support each other and stand with each other and come together as humans for each other. So with that, I would like to for us to sign off. Thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you soon with another
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
Have a
Bye
good
for
night.
now. Have a great weekend. Bye.